not have elected to do so. There are some that did not, but nevertheless, that is a good chunk of the work that we've done so far. The other thing that we have done is to look to expand our mask order. And so in connection with expanding the mask order, our idea there was that we wanted to make sure people know that not only when you're in an indoor place of public accommodation, but also when you're outside and you can't maintain social distancing, you should have a mask on. And it's a different day for all of us, but I think all of us basically walk around with a mask all the time. And so, and now it's kind of a thing of never leave home without it. So I've got mine. You got to make sure you have yours. That's another step. Probably next steps in terms of COVID-19 response. There is discussion about bars and restaurants. Some looking to close bars entirely, which is an area where spread can happen. Some looking for restaurants to go to a 25% capacity. The real story is this. We're having significant issues with community spread, really not at formal bars or anything like that, but instead in areas that I like to call informal spread. What is informal spread? Informal spread includes those outdoor backyard parties. And so for those of you who get invited to those where there may be 20, 30 people without a mask, it's important and indeed imperative for you to make sure that you're telling folks, maybe we should limit it to 10. Folks should still have masks, particularly when they're coming from different families. And that will probably be a look at kind of what our next order is about. Next question I got from folks, or recommendation, was automatic voter registration in Kansas City. And in terms of that, we cannot do that, unfortunately, the automatic voter registration. What that means is that when you get your license, for example, then you're already registered to vote. The state of Missouri, unfortunately, preempts us, thus doesn't allow us to do that sort of thing. And so we don't have the chance to do it. However, I've introduced an ordinance here at City Council that allows employees paid leave up to 2 days a year to work at election polls. 20 city employees have already participated in that program at our last Tuesday election. It made sure the process was more efficient, was workable, and we hope to have even more. We're proud of our Kansas City, Missouri employees, and we're happy to always make voting much easier for all of us. So that was a big part of what we're doing. We will continue to try our best to make sure that there is better and more ample opportunities for voting for all that sort of work. Our next and third point related to policing, which is something that you would absolutely expect. And the recommendation was that we should create an independent community review board. I've introduced already several resolutions at the Kansas City Police Department's Board of Police Commissioners, which run the police department. For those who don't know, unlike other cities, the Kansas City Police Department is run by a group of 5 people. 4 of those people are appointed by the governor of Missouri. One of them, me, is elected by the people of Kansas City. I would love to see us flip that number. And I would say that, and by the way, Cassidy, Job, you ask, so you can't gather 10 people at your house, but protests of thousands are allowed? No, you can gather 10 people at your house. The idea is that maybe sometimes you shouldn't. There are a lot of things that you maybe shouldn't do, but that aren't against the law, right? I don't actually think it's good for you to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day, but you can do it. We'll just tell you that it's not good for public health. Same thing with a lot of other things. But anyway, let me get back to the policing point. I have introduced a number of resolutions to increase independence of our police board, doing a few things. 1, referring all complaints that have been sustained to our county prosecutor. 2, moving our current review structure, the Office of Community Complaints, out of the Kansas City Police Department. Right now, the Office of Community Complaints reports its findings to the Board of Police Commissioners. I think it's fair, and a lot of people have said it, and I think they've said it with some true merit, that are we as independent as we need to be? And so that is kind of an important next step. A few other things that we've changed in the police area. 1, we require the Kansas City Police Department to reverse its policy of not sending probable cause statements to county prosecutors. And so that's an idea where we need to make sure that where there is an investigation of an officer-involved shooting, you can get information to the prosecutor as soon as possible, not making some big discussion internally or decision alone. Another thing that I've done, and by the way, I have notes for all this stuff, and there are 8 changes that I've already proposed. but I usually just like to talk one-on-one to you, so I'll get to the comments as soon as possible. We are requiring the Kansas City Police Department to provide weekly updates to the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. We think that's vital and actually really important for us so that the public has a better idea of what's going on. We've also compelled change of the Kansas City Police Department's use of tear gas, projectiles, and other tools merely for crowd control. We are making sure that where there is a protest, people have a right to speak, people have a right to participate in public discourse. Some people vote, some people post on Facebook, some people actually think it is vital that they get out and protest. All of those are acceptable activities as long as you stay peaceful, as long as we keep it safe, and keeping it safe is also something that we need to do, right? Not using things like tear gas and all of that to escalate further. Another big area of importance is creating better provisions for whistleblowers. Where there's a police officer who sees someone else doing things wrong, we need to have more situations where people will say, look, I know that was wrong and I'll have a duty to report. That's something that's been very important for me, and we'll make sure we get that done and passed to the Board of Police Commissioners. A few other questions that we had from the public. This is in connection with social services and police reform. Olivia asks, is the city considering reallocating money from the Kansas City Police Department to other helping and service professions, such as crisis intervention teams, social workers? By the way, Cheryl Ferguson, I see something good that you said about interactions of police and keeping track of them, and we already have an ordinance for that. We have a policy already, and I'll get back to that in 1 second. I'm taking note of it. But the question is the city considering reallocating money from KCPD to other helping and service professions? Oh, good Lord, people. Let's just stop real quick. So Aaron Michelle says, so you saying cops are liars with no integrity, always good to be reminded where you stand? Aaron, people, because I got folks on every side here. Let's just change what this is going to be about. Look, we're trying to come up with policies that will make a change and a difference for the world. Saying that accountability is something that's important doesn't mean that you're saying that every class of person is a liar or terrible. And you know what, frankly, it's BS to suggest such a thing. Instead, what we're actually trying to say is, hey, let's help you do your own job better. Let's make it so there is a record, right? Let's make it so people know there's a robust complaint process. Let's make it so people actually know, hey, when people are saying all these things about can I trust the police or not, you say we have 10 rules that show that we review complaints, that there's a good process, that everything is actually working well. So yeah, enough of the hogwash, people. Come on. We're trying to actually figure out how to make our community better. Name calling and all that sort of stuff back and forth gets us nowhere. And I know it's cool for you to do it on politicians' pages, but that's kind of a big and important part for us, okay? I'll get back to some of the others, right? The OCC is separate. No, the OCC, the Office of Community Complaints, still reports to the Board of Police Commissioners. That's why it'd be better if they reported to an independent source. Why wouldn't you want them to report to an independent source? Right? If they're independent, then go to a group that actually is independent. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's carry on. I'm getting into the moment. All right. Olivia from Facebook asks, is the city considering reallocating money from KCPD to other helping and service professions, such as crisis intervention, social workers, community mental health, domestic violence, etc.? Many are asking about funding for social services and mental health. A few things. First of all, in the department already, there is a crisis intervention team. They do good work. Frankly, we need to increase their size. We need to actually look to make sure that we're doing more of that work that is hands-on with the community, that is not necessarily the enforcement side. I've said this to anybody who can listen. Our crime problem actually speaks to prevention, intervention, and enforcement, or clearance, really is how I see it. We spend a whole lot of time talking about enforcement, right? The whole conversation on Operation Legend is enforcement. The whole conversation on more police, less police, whatever, is enforcement. The whole conversation on punishments for people, enforcement. Yeah, we can't do that forever. We've been doing enforcement at high levels for years, for decades, really. When I was a kid, they started trying to charge youth for more offenses, right? You saw 12, 13-year-olds getting charges that were hung on them. What difference did it make? I'm 25 years older than I was then when we darn near broke our last homicide record. I guess it's 28 years ago now. And so what have we done? We still have the same crime problem. We still have the same challenge. We still have full prisons. We've got to do more. We've got to work on prevention and intervention. And frankly, when I talk to police officers, they say, yeah, we like those other tools. We like those other folks that are actually doing work to make sure that there's less crime later. We're doing things to de-escalate. We're doing things to defuse. We're doing things to give people who are getting caught in the system second chances. That's why I've done my work on marijuana reform. Why is it that when I went to a majority white college, right, people who were smoking weed were actually just existing in college, they got good degrees, now they all live in New York and are making a lot of money. Whereas if you're on the streets in Kansas City and you're 19 and you were busted, then you're getting a prison charge hung on you, right? And then you're actually dealing with probation and parole, then sometimes you're caught reoffending, right? That is some of the challenge that we have, okay? Kissy from Facebook asks, with Medicaid expansion on the way, has the city looked into how available services, personnel, and beds can be expanded to offer services to this newly eligible segment of the population? So here's the thing, right? It'll still be a little bit of work in the state legislature to make sure that we actually get Medicaid expansion delivered. And that is unfortunate, and it is frustrating for us. But nevertheless, we're going to make sure we get our work done. Kansas City is looking at, frankly, how we can use our personnel better, how we can make sure there's expanded space, not just for mental health services, but domestic violence services. If you want to talk about travesties in the world, a travesty is the fact that every bed at our domestic violence shelters most nights in Kansas City is full. And what happens when every bed is full? It means that someone who is trying to get away from an abuser is calling 911 and has nowhere to go. That's the sort of thing that I want us to see expand, not only just in our health professional services, but frankly looking at how we can tie more city services to support in connection with those areas and those issues. Holly from Instagram asks, getting KCPD back from being controlled by the state. Can this happen? Can we get local control? It takes a lot of work. It will require state action, either a vote of the public or alternatively, state legislative change. I think I'm supportive of that, the change. We are going through the work right now to figure out how to get it done right. But it's hard, and it's going to require us to either convince a bunch of conservative legislators, or alternatively, we're going to have to actually get to a ballot issue and get signatures throughout Missouri of hundreds of thousands of Missourians. That's how we got to Medicaid expansion, and so that's where we largely are. Okay? A question on Operation Legend. How has Operation Legend been affecting Kansas City so far? Are there still federal officers in Kansas City? When I think about Operation Legend, I know there's a debate on its effectiveness. To me, it is very similar to what happens in Kansas City frequently when the U.S. Marshal Service comes in and picks up a number of fugitives. It has largely been prosecuted, as far as I can tell so far, as a citywide warrant check. It is not something thus far that I think has led to many homicide charges, aggravated assault, or non-fatal shooting charges. I think that was what was said to a lot of people. That's what was sold. I would appreciate it doing that. But, it's kind of, it's been a challenging issue for us to try to get them to veer towards that. I've said a few times this about Operation Legend. If we actually took some of those officers that are still here and will be here, I think, for another 30 days, and said, let's just match each one to an unsolved homicide, what a difference could that make, right? Instead, what we're doing is actually just having them, I guess, collect fugitives. It's not going to make a long-term dent in our murder numbers. It's not going to make a long-term dent in our non-fatal shooting numbers, and that to me is a problem. Yes, if you're a fugitive from justice and you've done enough things to have a warrant, particularly a serious violent crime one, that's sure, I guess you're subject to getting picked up. But I would love to see us actually be creative with our efforts, be creative with our focus in terms of making sure that, we're using those really creative ideas to solve homicides in Kansas City, to actually get those sorts of solutions that we need. On housing, Alicia on LinkedIn asks, what can we do at the local level to prevent evictions? To prevent evictions at the local level, we're already planning a few things. One is to make sure that we create a better supply of housing and better housing opportunities in our community. Right now, you have people that are stuck with, by the way, so people are still talking about Operation Legend. They will be gone, and they will be gone soon. The question for us is, what do we do next to stop violent crime? I don't support actually just bringing in more federal agents, more law enforcement, anything of that sort. But what we need to do is actually make sure we are working on that three-pronged approach that I said before: prevention, intervention, and enforcement. Prevention, intervention, and enforcement. That's going to be the important step. And when you have that sort of step, you're stopping homicides before they happen. You're stopping non-fatal shootings before it happens. Okay? Preventing local evictions. The idea, some of y'all on the comments, you're just angry, man. Like, I'll speak to this. Like Jennifer Bowen, you've got a nice job on the last minute ordinance. Here's the thing. I'll get to that later. I shouldn't get astray. I just want y'all to understand, we're having a forum, we're having a conversation. Put them in the form of questions, That's how we can actually do this. And if you're just here to hate, then I get it. But, let's try to actually resolve things. Let's see how we can actually figure out things for the betterment of the city long term. Preventing evictions. The way we prevent evictions is multifaceted. One is creation of more housing opportunities in our city. The second is creating more funding to help avoid evictions, to hold off evictions. For example, we've put millions of dollars into eviction preventing over recent weeks. Some of it's been help from the federal government. Actually, most of it's been help from the federal government to make sure that we're holding off evictions. If you live in the Clay County or Northland part of Kansas City, the northeast part of Kansas City, then we have an eviction assistance. We have funds to help prevent evictions, to help people pay their utilities. Those are some of the things we're trying to do to make sure that there aren't more evictions. But long term, we've got to make sure that we're doing the work. That we're doing the work of creating housing opportunities, creating more tenants' rights, etc. Okay? And by tenants' rights, that means giving people more time. If they have complaints about living conditions, making sure that there aren't absentee or abusive landlords that are taking advantage of their tenants. Those are some of their things. Roy from Facebook asks, garbage pickup and the problem with trash left on Kansas City streets due to strict limits and abysmal recycling opportunities in Kansas City. What are you doing? In terms of what we're doing with trash collection, we continue with our solid waste division to try to not only make sure that we're collecting trash, and we've issued more contracts with trash. We're doing a much better job of it in the Northland and in the Central City. We're trying to also make sure that we have an opportunity to have better responsiveness when people call in and say there's a lot of trash or there's a dumping site, to actually say, right, we'll be there for you and we'll actually address and answer those questions pretty quickly. We'll be able to pick it up within a few days, right? That's why it's actually very important for us to make sure we're getting that work done, and that's a step that I believe we're going to be taking. Oh my gosh, off camera nose, I'm getting thirsty for things. Water, sorry. I just pulled a Marco Rubio, so nevertheless. Anyway, sorry, that's funny, double entendre. Beacon Hill development was helped tremendously by the city, but what happened to mixed income housing? We need to actually have a better amount of mixed income housing in Kansas City. And so we actually have been producing more of that. And if you look at our annual low income housing tax credit related projects from the Missouri Housing Development Commission, we rarely actually just do either exclusively high income without any income restrictions or exclusively low income new housing developments. We are continuing to keep increase our mixed income housing numbers, and we will, I think, work on more of that as time goes on. Okay? Veronica from Facebook asks, is there a current plan to increase funding and ensure careful planning to build more affordable housing for low-income families in Kansas City? The answer is yes. However, I will note this. We have budget problems. This year, Kansas City is projecting, due to COVID-19, about a $50 million budget loss. That is going to be, I think, a real issue. And what I believe is that it's going to mean that we need to marshal federal resources even better for a long time. Every year, Kansas City, Missouri receives about $8 million per year that can go in the housing arena. We need to make sure that we're continuing to actually add on to real amounts of affordable housing. Not just funding programs, because we've always funded them, not just doing the sort of work that may look good in press clippings and all of that. Instead, investing long-term in, I think, what are good projects that provide for mixed income, quality, affordable housing. Are there plans to educate the public about the history and presence of redlining in Kansas City? The answer to that is yes, but frankly, that's an ongoing thing that we have to do. I think a lot of people fail to realize the way that we live now and the way that we are in Kansas City, segregated living patterns, areas where there is lack of economic, particularly private and public economic investment. We do need to explain to more people why that matters and why it's so important that we change it long term. If you don't understand your history, you're bound to repeat it. And so that is something that I'm big on doing long term for us. Marijuana. A sip of brandy on Instagram asks, will marijuana cases be automatically expunged or do people need to file? You'll need to file. And Wizard, remind me, is there an address for pardons?
kcmo.gov/mayoral pardon.
So it is kcmo.gov/mayoral pardon. kcmo.gov/mayoral pardon. Go there, you can find a form to apply for a pardon, and we're happy to we're going to get that process going for you. We are already pardoning people. You'll see more information on that coming up. And so that is an important area. I think that is important, vital for us. Tom Scott on LinkedIn says, for mayor of a major city, you do spend quite a bit of time on social media platforms, unless you have somebody who handles this for you. I will note that I'm blessed to have an outstanding staff of communications folks that help me communicate to Kansas City and with Kansas Cityans. Particularly as we've dealt with COVID-19, I think information exchange, working with people, is so very important. And so I'm happy to do it. I think this is the way that we can talk right now. I don't get to do big community events anymore, but I need to make sure I'm still talking to people. So that is something that we will continue to do. And I'm proud of it. I will also say this, though. I spend a lot of time myself, usually in the non-work hours. I don't sleep much. I'm already bald, so I guess I don't have any hair to lose. But, sometimes I think that social media is a real challenge, but I think it's positive that we all get to interact with each other. Okay? Extra questions. Tom Scott of LinkedIn, or Jeff, sorry, Tom, I just answered your question. Jessica Jones Wiley, I like this. She asked, did someone in your family get charged for weed? I'm just asking because Jessica knows I really am against weed charges. No, I just have seen the injustice and the inequity. For those who know my background story, I grew up in the inner city of Kansas City. I got sent to private school, and I then went to a good college, WashU, and went to Cornell for law school. So good schools, expensive schools all along. Every step of the way, when I was going to like a suburban prep school, I saw kids that were using drugs that didn't get in trouble, and they got to go on and have wonderful lives. I saw it again in college. I saw it again in law school, and I just started to think for a minute, you know what? This isn't right. Why is it that we have two justice systems for different types of people? One justice system for people who live in the suburbs and all of that. Another justice system for people that are in the core of our city, that are disproportionately black. Right? That is a problem to me. And so that's why I have continued to say, this is about fairness. This isn't about marijuana. I don't use marijuana. I don't think you all should. But in the same way that we say that we have a way to address smoking cigarettes or drinking and all of that, we need to have a way that says, yeah, we're not going to use something to lock up thousands and thousands of our people. So it's not right. Anyway, Jet Production on Instagram. Why didn't you go to my 90s house party? Opportunity to share. I got you. I would have loved to go to the 90s house party, but yes, during the time of COVID-19, we shouldn't be having house parties. And so for all of you who are doing those big house get-togethers, please don't. And let's be honest. Let's just be real. Just, this is between me, you, and the fence post behind you, okay? Be a social person. Talk to people. But don't host a house party. Don't host the sort of thing that is a challenge for people. Don't do the things that are contributing to the spread of COVID-19. You know what? Yes, have a friend socially distanced in your backyard, but don't have 20. Don't have 10. That's how we're seeing more problems. And those problems affect real people and real lives. And so that is probably the greatest thing you can do. The other thing is, and I know it is so political, I get calls all the time, from people who are like, Lucas, I hate you. How dare you make me wear a mask? And I'm like, you know what, bro, don't wear a mask. You know what? I'm trying to get 95% of Kansas Cityans to do the right thing. And I think 95% will. There are 5% who want to fight everything, just like there are 5% who want to do any number of things. You know what? Okay. Whether it's our speeding laws, whether it's a bunch of other things, we never get 100% compliance. Whether it's our homicide law. But I think most of us know homicides are bad. And so we comply. I think most of us know that, you know what? Even if there's weird science later and all of that, I'm wearing a mask so I can protect my mother's life. She donated a kidney to a random person she didn't know, right? I don't want her impacted negatively. I'm wearing a mask because I want to actually make sure that the world will be a little bit safer and that schools can open. That's why we're doing these things. It's not about power. It's not about anything else. I sit in this office almost all day. I don't actually feel like I have that much power. Instead, we're doing it because it's right. Okay. Now we get to go to the comments. And I love my comment people. I got about 10 minutes for comments. So let's do it all. Kyle Blaylock, you are a funny man. Jeffrey asks if your milkshake brings all the... Never mind. You guys are something. All right. Any questions? Commercial loan discrimination. We see a lot of that actually. And we are trying to make sure and this is actually fairly important on commercial loan discrimination on the east side of Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri every year does about $1 billion more actually of banking business. We are trying to create ordinances so that our lenders have to give loans on the east side of Kansas City. They can't just take $1 billion of our business to bank each year and not actually play a part of the community. And so I think the thing is, it's going to be important for us to make sure that we are doing, I think, what is important and vital work to really call out people that aren't working with us, make sure in our procurement processes we give advantages to people who do, and that's how I want to go forward. There are a lot of questions relating to, are we shutting down the city? Well, we won't have to if everybody wears a mask. I'd rather not. And I don't think we will get to a point if we need to, if we actually do manage to make sure that people are following mask requirements or we're following social distancing requirements. Cheryl Ferguson writes, you have enough power to convince the commissioners they need to have a public meeting. I do, and I've actually brought that up the last time. Cheryl, I will try to do that again. Last time I actually said there's no reason that we don't do in person. They actually cited my own order back at me. But no, I think it is time that we actually have public meetings. It'll probably be a restricted number because we are still trying to make sure we do that. But no, I think the public needs to be able to be a part of it, be a part of public meetings. We do that at City Council. I'm the mayor of Kansas City. I think that's important. Can you speak on why your election campaign received $30,000 from the Fraternal Order of Police? First, I'm not sure. I'll need to check it. There are funding limits for actual campaigns, and so the mayor's race, there would have been a maximum donation allowed of probably about $3,000 in the primary and $3,000 in the general. So the most that you could have seen was $6,000. I was endorsed by a number of organizations. A lot of them did donate to me during the campaign. I don't think that actually controls what I do now. If you've looked at some of my votes, I vote against a number of people that had given me donations before. It's part of being mayor. It's part of annoying people. I have not personally talked to the head of the Fraternal Order of Police in a while now. However, there are some leaders of civil rights organizations who have. And they don't want us to run a local control ballot question, which is interesting because it seems like they're working together more than perhaps others are. I think that is a challenge. It's a reality of politics. But you know what? I'm just going to try to do what's right. I'm not here to try to call out other people. That's why I'm just answering the questions that I have. But no, I don't think I'm controlled by anybody. If you were to ask them right now, I think they would say I'm not doing everything that they want me to do. And so that's how we do things right. Now, I'm not always going to do everything that you, for example, want me to do either. But that's balance. That's life. And that's public service. A lot of you are talking about masks. School recommendations. What should schools do for students in the fall? Well, we continue to stand by our recommendation that you should not start school before Labor Day. This will give us time to hopefully enhance our testing in Kansas City, give school districts more time to prepare. And we've seen a number of our school districts, Kansas City Public, North Kansas City Schools, for example, go ahead and say that they're going to start a little bit later. Most schools are also doing a hybrid of virtual learning on the early days. I think that that is a smart and responsible way to go. I don't know if our country is ready for in-person schooling yet. We're certainly not taking the steps necessary. We need to make sure CARES Act money is getting to our public schools so that they can be ready, so that they can make sure that contact tracing is ready, that there's PPE, that there's mask separation, that there are all types of other things that are in connection with it. And, we haven't done that yet. And so I'd like to see us do more of that work. Are we trying to create equity or equal opportunity? That's every day. It's every day that we try to create more equity and equal opportunity. And I'll tell you this, it's challenging because everybody has a different view of what the best way to get to that is. For some of us, it is passing an ordinance that gives more job opportunities to people at City Hall. For others, it's investing in small businesses and allowing them to grow. Regardless of what it is, the way that you actually ensure we have equity and equal opportunity is by listening to more people. There's some who ask, why am I on social media so much? Well, because it's important to listen to you. Whether you are somebody who's a hater in the comments, whether you're somebody who's an appreciator, whether you're in between, it is important to make sure we're engaging and we interact. I'm not going to answer everybody's question because I don't have time today. I'm not going to make everybody happy. But what I do think we need to do is make sure that you know that your voice matters. And that's why I give my cell phone number out. That's why I do all these other things. I can't respond to everything because I'm just one man, but I sure as heck try to make sure there are as many forums as possible for you to hear from me, because that's what you deserve. Y'all may vote me out of office via recall. Some of you on the comments actually want to recall me tomorrow. It'll take you a few days, but I want them to be able to say, you know what, say what you will about that man. He was accessible. He would talk to us. He would listen. And that's, I think that's better than anything. Let me do about one or two more questions, and then I'll get out of your way. Oh, okay. Can you explain the thought behind the 20% minimum recommendation for indigent nonviolent offenses for diversion? So today, and I'm actually quite proud of it, we passed a resolution which is directing municipal court to offer diversion to more people. At least 20% of all offers of diversion need to actually be offered to indigent defendants. The reason we set 20% was actually because currently it's usually almost never indigent people that are offered diversion if they don't have counsel. That's unfair. Some are, but here's the deal. Have any of you gotten speeding tickets before? Some of you are so puritanical, I imagine you're not. But if you've gotten a speeding ticket, what do you usually do? You call a lawyer, you pay an extra amount, so then it's changed to a non-moving violation. Poor people often can't do that. They plead guilty. They pay their ticket, they get points on their license. If you add something else, then you get more trouble, right? That's what's happened often with every weed charge. That's what's happened often with every small and minor charge we have. I don't think it's right that we don't actually give the same opportunity to people of a lower income just because they can't afford a lawyer. And so that's where I think we need to make sure we're doing better. Annie or someone says, yes, he's avoiding it completely, but I don't see where we started on the thing. All right. Well, if our voice matters, then why are you medically discriminating against people? Oh, this is a mask question. Just wear a mask. It's better for the world. I know. You don't want to. So, I'll tell you this. Just don't go into places that require a mask. Our current order is actually indoor public accommodations. I don't know, do it is what you're going to do. But for the rest of us, we'd like to be safe. We'd like to protect our families. And we think that masks are vital and important. Okay? All right. Well, that is about all we have time for, unfortunately. You can keep the questions going in the comments. When I wake up at 3 in the morning, maybe I'll actually wake up and answer some questions. That's what I do for fun. So that's kind of our next important step. I appreciate you more than anything. I love Kansas City. I actually appreciate all of you. And I hope we have a chance to visit again soon. Keep the questions in the comments, and we'll try to make sure we're answering them for you along the way. Take care for now. Bye-bye.